My husband secretly put everything in his mother's name, so I had the last laugh. Have you ever looked at someone you loved and realized they had been lying to you for years? Not one lie, not two. An entire life built on lies. Because that's exactly what happened to me. For 11 years, I thought I was building a future with my husband. Instead, I was building wealth for his mother. And when I finally discovered the truth, they thought I would walk away with nothing. What they didn't realize was that I had been paying attention far longer than they thought. And by the time they understood what was happening, it was already too late. My name is Claire, and this is how my husband and his mother tried to leave me with nothing, and how their own greed destroyed everything they had planned. When I met Ethan, I was 28 years old. He was charming, confident, and seemed incredibly family-oriented. At first, I thought that was a good thing. He called his mother every day. He visited her every weekend. He constantly talked about how much he respected her. Looking back, the warning signs were everywhere. But love has a funny way of making red flags look like decorations. We got married 2 years later. Neither of us came from wealthy families. We started small, tiny apartment, used furniture, old cars that constantly broke down. The kind of life where every dollar mattered. And honestly, I didn't mind, because we were building it together. At least that's what I believed. I worked as a financial analyst. Ethan worked in commercial construction. Over time, both of our careers improved. Our income grew. Our savings grew. Eventually, we bought a beautiful house, then a rental property, then another investment property. Every step felt like proof that our hard work was paying off. Whenever I asked about paperwork, Ethan always handled it. His explanation was simple. Let me deal with the boring stuff. It sounded reasonable. After all, I trusted him. Why wouldn't I? He was my husband, the father of our daughter, my partner, or so I thought. The first crack appeared completely by accident. One afternoon, I was organizing tax documents. I couldn't find paperwork for one of our rental properties, so I searched through an old filing cabinet in Ethan's office. I wasn't snooping. I was genuinely looking for documents. Then I found something strange. The property deed. But instead of Ethan's name, or my name, the owner listed was Margaret Harrison, his mother. I stared at the paper, confused. Maybe it was an error. Maybe she had helped us buy it. Maybe there was some tax strategy involved. I tried to think of innocent explanations, because when you love someone, your brain desperately searches for reasons not to believe the worst. That night, I asked Ethan about it. The change in his face lasted less than a second, but I saw it. Panic. Then it disappeared. Oh, that? He laughed. Mom helped us secure financing years ago. It's temporary. Temporary. That word should have bothered me more. Instead, I accepted the answer. For another 6 months. Then another strange thing happened. I was meeting with a mortgage specialist about refinancing one of our properties. During the conversation, she asked a simple question. Are you referring to the property owned by your mother-in-law? I felt my stomach tighten. What do you mean? The woman looked confused. You aren't listed as an owner. I forced a smile, finished the meeting, drove home, and sat in my car for almost an hour. Something wasn't right. Something was very, very wrong. That evening, I started researching. Public records, property databases, county filings, everything. And what I found changed my life. The house we lived in, owned by Margaret. The rental properties, owned by Margaret. The vacation cabin, owned by Margaret. Even several investment accounts were connected to trusts controlled by Margaret. My husband and I had spent over a decade paying mortgages, maintenance costs, taxes, and repairs. But legally, almost everything belonged to his mother. Not us. Her. I couldn't sleep that night. I felt sick, humiliated, angry, terrified. How could this happen? How had I missed it? Then I started asking an even worse question. How long had Ethan been planning this? The next morning, I hired an attorney. Not because I wanted a divorce. Not yet. The attorney spent weeks investigating. When the report finally arrived, I sat in her office, reading page after page. My hands were shaking. According to the records, many assets had never been placed in Ethan's name. From the very beginning, they were purchased under arrangements connected to Margaret. In other cases, ownership had quietly been transferred years earlier. All completely legal, all carefully documented, all hidden behind layers of paperwork most spouses never examine. Then my attorney looked at me and said something that broke my heart. This didn't happen accidentally. I already knew, but hearing it out loud hurt. Because accidents can be forgiven. Planning takes intention. Planning takes betrayal. For weeks, I said nothing. I acted normal. I smiled, cooked dinner, attended family events, and watched. For the first time, I truly observed Ethan and Margaret. The way they exchanged glances, the private conversations, the confidence they carried. They genuinely believed I knew nothing. Then one evening, everything became clear. I came home earlier than expected. They were sitting in the kitchen. They didn't hear me enter, and I heard Margaret say, "If she ever leaves, she gets nothing." Silence. Then Ethan laughed. Actually laughed. That was the whole point. The whole point. 11 years, a marriage, a child, a life. The whole point was making sure I could never claim what I helped build. I quietly walked back outside, got in my car, and cried harder than I had cried in my entire life. Not because of the money, because of the realization that the man I loved never truly saw me as a partner. He saw me as a worker, a contributor, someone useful, but never someone deserving of ownership. That night changed everything. I stopped thinking emotionally. I started thinking strategically. Because if Ethan and Margaret had spent years planning against me, I needed to be smarter. Not louder, smarter. Over the next year, I focused on one thing: building assets they couldn't touch. I increased my retirement contributions, expanded investment accounts under my name, accepted consulting contracts, started a side business, saved aggressively. Every dollar was documented, every transaction recorded, every account protected. Meanwhile, Ethan remained completely unaware. His confidence became my greatest advantage. People who think they've already won stop paying attention. Then karma delivered an unexpected gift. Greed. Greed always ruins people eventually. Margaret became obsessed with expanding her real estate portfolio. She started taking larger risks, bigger loans, more debt, more leverage. Ethan encouraged her. Together they believed property values would rise forever. They borrowed heavily, signed personal guarantees, refinanced repeatedly, moved money constantly. My attorney watched everything, patiently, quietly, waiting. Then the market shifted. Not a crash, just enough pressure to expose bad decisions. Several tenants left, vacancies increased, interest rates rose, cash flow tightened. Suddenly their empire wasn't producing easy money anymore. And because nearly everything was legally in Margaret's name, nearly all liability belongs to Margaret too. The arguments started, then intensified, then exploded. Ethan blamed Margaret. Margaret blamed Ethan. Neither wanted responsibility. Both wanted control. I watched from a distance, calmly, patiently, the same way they had watched me for years. One evening, Ethan came home furious. "We might have to sell some properties." I nodded, pretended to be surprised. Inside, I already knew, because my attorney had been tracking public filings for months. The situation was worse than he realized. Far worse. Then came the final twist. During a deeper financial review connected to refinancing attempts, investigators discovered irregularities in how certain expenses had been reported. Nothing dramatic enough for prison, but enough to trigger audits, enough to create legal headaches, enough to delay transactions. Suddenly, properties couldn't be sold quickly. Loans became harder to secure. Pressure mounted. Every decision they had made to protect themselves started working against them, because ownership doesn't only bring rewards, it brings responsibility. And Margaret owned almost everything. A few months later, Ethan finally asked to talk. I already knew what was coming. We sat across from each other at our dining table. The same table where we had celebrated birthdays, anniversaries, family milestones. He looked exhausted, older, defeated. Then he said something incredible. We need to work together. Not I'm sorry. Not I betrayed you. Not I lied. We need to work together. Because suddenly, he needed help. I looked at him quietly. Then I asked one question. When exactly were you planning to tell me that nothing was in our names? The color drained from his face. For the first time in years, he knew. He knew I knew. The conversation lasted 3 hours. Excuses, justifications, blame, denials, half-truths. Every version of the story except the honest one. Eventually, he admitted it. His mother had convinced him years earlier. She feared divorce, feared asset division, feared losing wealth. So they built a system designed to protect everything from me. A wife, the person supposedly closest to him. I listened quietly. Then I told him something he never expected. I stopped needing your money a long time ago. His expression changed immediately. Confusion, then concern, then fear. Because suddenly he realized something. While he had spent years hiding assets, I had spent years building my own. 6 months later, I filed for divorce. The process wasn't easy, but it wasn't devastating either. Because unlike the woman they thought they were trapping, I was prepared. Financially, emotionally, legally, and most importantly, mentally. Their entire strategy depended on me being helpless, dependent, uninformed. Instead, I became the one thing they never expected: independent. The funniest part? The properties they worked so hard to protect became their burden. Several had to be sold. Others generated little profit. Legal costs piled up. Debt consumed cash flow. The empire they built to exclude me slowly became an anchor, dragging them down. Meanwhile, my consulting company expanded. My investments grew. My retirement accounts flourished. And for the first time in years, every achievement belonged to me. No hidden ownership. No secret transfers. No manipulation. Just mine. A year after the divorce, I ran into Margaret at a grocery store. She looked tired. Nothing like the confident woman who once believed she controlled everything. We exchanged polite greetings. Then she asked a question. Are you happy? I smiled. Not out of revenge, not out of cruelty, just honesty. Yes. And I was. Because happiness isn't getting even. It's no longer needing revenge at all. The real victory wasn't watching them struggle. The real victory was discovering that their betrayal had forced me to become stronger than I ever would have been otherwise. They spent years making sure I wouldn't get a piece of their future. In the end, I built a better future without them. And that was the last laugh. The only one that truly mattered.